again, I mentioned the Thunder. I think they're a really young team that is ahead of schedule. I think this is really big for them in terms of their confidence moving forward, in terms of getting the one seed behind Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams coming into his own, and Chet Holmgren having a really good rookie season, and them just building that chemistry along with the experience of being in the playoffs. So I think that was really big for them. And we just mentioned all the other teams. The Lakers, I think they had a really nice end to the season. They were really up and down the whole season. They had a really nice first part of the season and then took a dip. And then now at the end of the season, they started picking things back up, kind of figuring things out. So they're always a threat, especially with LeBron James. You can never count him out. And Anthony Davis has played great. But it's a lot of things going on in the West. And with all that being said, the Denver Nuggets, I think that they are just a step above everyone else. And they are the team that I have coming out of the West. They are the team that I think has a legit chance to repeat as champions. One of the few teams that have a legit chance to win back to back in the past
I think you're
however many
probably talking
years.
about the Warriors with KD. It's probably the
Yeah,
last
Warriors with
time.
KD. Yep, yep,
Um,
yep. So that's just how I see it. The Denver Nuggets, they are the team to beat. And I think that between them and the Celtics, those two teams have the best starting five in the league. Now, if one of those players gets hurt for the Denver Nuggets, then that makes it tougher. And their system works so well together. They play off of each other so well that if one of them goes out, I think that that could hinder them
it's
a whole
different.
bunch. Yes, it's a whole bunch different. So as long as they're
Yeah.
healthy, I see them being the ones representing the West in the finals.
Yeah, and that's a pretty interesting correlation between the best team in the East, Boston Celtics, and who I think is still, even though they're not the number one seed, best team in the West, Denver Nuggets. Like their top five is so above the rest when you look at everybody, especially in their respective conference, in my opinion, that when they don't have that starting five, when they're missing a piece, like when the Nuggets are missing Murray, when the Celtics are missing Porzingis, like it does shake things up to where now you're looking at that bench depth, which isn't necessarily what it's been in past years. The Nuggets, even before they started winning, like I think about when they were in the bubble, they were one of the deepest teams I had seen in a few years. They had guys deep down the roster. It's really not, as deep as it has been in the past. And the Celtics, they've obviously gone all in with Drew Holiday and Porzingis as additions, but that's really the thing about the Nuggets. Like, can they stay healthy? And I feel like that's kind of unfair because we are judging teams based off of them being fully healthy. But I feel like that's really the only thing that's going to truly stop them. And looking forward, I think the best matchup of the whole Western Conference playoffs could honestly be that second round between Denver and the Timberwolves. Granted, they both make it out, which I do think they probably both will. The Timberwolves have played the Nuggets really well, and I think they did have the season series over them. And I think that's going to be a matchup to look for. Like just seeing Anthony Edwards finally being able to take charge, I think it's kind of unspoken. It doesn't need to be said that he's the main franchise player. You have a lot of franchise pieces, but it all starts and stops with Anthony Edwards. And I think his rise to that status this year has been very good for the team. I think they have a sense of direction. I think they're on the same page. I think they're playing as a unit. And I don't think they're really having to struggle fitting things together. I know adding Rudy Gobert was a transition period for them, but I think they finally got what they needed. They got the veteranship in Mike Conley, who's always been a great point guard, and shout out to him as well. I think he's his like 17th year in the league or 16th or something like that. Like he's up there
Yeah.
and still producing well for teams. You kill Alexander Walker, Shea Gilgis, SGA's cousin. He's hooping slow mo. Kyle Anderson, Jaden McDaniels. has been deemed as the best perimeter defender in the league by some people. And then you got Cat and Rudy. So like this team is very much pieced together where I could see them having a conference finals run if they go against the Denver Nuggets. They have them outmanned first off, but the thing about the Nuggets is they make the plays that need to be made. That's the thing about them. You might be a deeper team, but they're going to always make the right play. They're going to make the shots when they need to, and they're always going to meet that moment. So you have to be able to match that. And I think immaturity has been the thing about the Minnesota Timberwolves in years past. You think about when they matched up against the Memphis Grizzlies. That's a
Yep.
series I think they should have won. And then they got a piece of the Nuggets last year in the first round, I believe. I mean,
Yep.
they weren't what they are today. So I think this is going to be a true testament about the Minnesota Timberwolves because, first off, they have to beat the Phoenix Suns. That's not a team you could just, brush over. But I do expect them to win that with home court advantage. This is going to be a matchup if they do get to play against the Nuggets, even if somehow the Lakers by a miracle were able to beat the Nuggets. Like it's going to really show a lot about this franchise. Are we going to consider them contenders by beating Denver, or are they going to kind of be in like, yeah, we'll wait and see if it can happen? And the teams may not really take you as serious or believe you can do it. This is going to be a very big playoffs for them because I think this will shape the direction of the franchise and their expectations. Because you got Ant, you got Cat, you got Rudy. Those are people you're gonna have to pay, years down the line. And when things aren't working, we know those cuts and tough decisions are coming. So I think this really means a lot for the Timberwolves and as far as where the franchise is going. But I'm really excited to see them the most out of anybody. I think everybody's pretty much been on the Thunder, even at the end of last year, is kind of watching them, but the Timberwolves was kind of in a not a surprise because I knew they had the talent, but I wasn't really expecting them to be at the top of the West like consistently all year. So I'm really excited to see what they can do in the playoffs. I think they have a lot of potential.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this iteration of the Timberwolves in the playoffs, especially with Anthony Edwards coming into his own as a star in this league, rising, kind of getting to that superstar area possibly. So they are definitely a team I'm looking forward to seeing. But for me, it's the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are a team that I've been excited to see this season. So just seeing them in terms of this specific iteration of the team, how young they are. I want to see how they handle this playoff bump. I want to see how they handle the atmosphere and all that stuff. And they actually did handle kind of a simulation of it in the play-in last year. But I want to see them in a 7-game series. I want to see how they match up with different teams and see how far they can go. And I actually think that a lot of people might use their youth as a negative, but I think that they could possibly surprise some people in that
That was the whole
specific
thing about the Thunder
area.
when they had KD and Russ and Harden, like
Exactly.
about their age and youth. So it's kind of fitting, if we're being
Yeah.
honest. It's like the same thing with the same team.
Yeah. And I don't think that they necessarily make a whole bunch of young team mistakes, if that makes sense. I know that the experience, a lot of people might hold that over them. But with Shea in the driver's seat, along with Jalen Williams, and how they kind of are the engine of the offense. And then you have Chet who can do a whole bunch in terms of spacing the floor, but also protecting the rim and playing off of those guys. And you have Lou Dort, who is really good shooting the basketball from the 3-point line and is a great defender. And also all these other young talented players, they mesh really well together. And like I said, they don't make a whole bunch of young team mistakes. So in that sense, they're kind of ahead of schedule. And in terms of clinching the number one seed, they are definitely ahead of schedule in their track of the team that they have now and how they grow for years to come. Yeah, the Thunder are my team that I'm looking forward to, but I think you had a really good point about the Timberwolves. I think this year they are different from years past, where it was really frustrating seeing that team a few years ago when they went up against the Grizzlies, because like you said, they just made a lot of young team mistakes. Like I said, the Thunder don't make those mistakes. That year, the Timberwolves made those mistakes, and it was really frustrating because they could have beat the Memphis Grizzlies. And I thought that they had so much potential, but now you're kind of realizing it now, and they've kind of grown from that. They are the number one defense in the league. They are number one in terms of opponents' points allowed and opponent field goal percentage. The only thing that gives me cause to pause for the Timberwolves is their half court offense. So in the playoffs, the game slows down, right? And you have to execute in the half court. So I think on the defensive end, that's going to be a plus for them because they have been the best defensive team in the league. But on offense, I think that's where they could possibly struggle because half in the half court, they tend to rely a lot on pull-up jump shots and a lot of isolation plays where it's a lot of the times Anthony Edwards, he's settling for pull-up jump shots or things like that when they are in a better flow and they get to the basket or they're knocking down their three-point shots. They are better, but they just haven't been consistent on that side of the ball in terms of half-court offense. So that is one possible concern for the Timberwolves. But other than that, I think that they could be a team that could beat a lot of other teams in the West.